Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, says peace is not Zelensky's priority. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard on Sunday sharply criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's leadership of his country and said while President Donald Trump is working to end Russia's war, Zelensky has different aims in mind.
President Trump recognizes the urgent need to end this war after 3 long, bloody years and has proven that he is the only person that can do this. President Zelensky has different aims in mind. He has said that he wants to end this war, but he will only accept an end, apparently, that leads to what he views as Ukraine's victory, even if it comes at an incredibly high cost of potentially World War III or even a nuclear war. President Trump is committed to peace and to freedom. We're seeing this big divergence here between his position and his commitment to these values and the interests of the American people and the interests of President Zelensky and these European leaders. This is an issue that has to be resolved. I know President Trump is committed to doing this, and that's really where the next step needs to lead.
Yeah, so what is that next step? Because one of the criticisms of the Biden administration is that they hadn't talked to Putin for years. President Trump is doing that, he's having that conversation, but now it seems the relationship with Zelensky is broken, at least temporarily. How does that get back on track? Because he's got to be part of the conversation as well.
Of course, and President Trump has made very clear that in his previous conversations with both Putin and Zelensky that he wants to engage with both. He wants to engage in honest and real negotiations. And unfortunately, what happened in the White House after close to an hour of conversation when President Zelensky directly challenged President Trump and Vice President Vance in front of the media and the American people, he really showed his lack of interest in any real good faith negotiations. I can tell you there were a lot of conversations that were happening through different emissaries, both for Zelensky and for President Trump, leading up to his visit there to the Oval Office. And President Zelensky's immediate escalation there was frankly quite a surprise. This has created a huge rift in the relationship. President Zelensky, as you pointed out in the clips that you played, doesn't believe that he did anything wrong and that there was no issue with what he brought up in the Oval Office with President Trump. There's going to have to be a rebuilding of any kind of interest in good faith negotiations, I think, before President Trump is going to be willing to re-engage on this.
One of the things that might have gotten lost in the shuffle as people were trying to listen and now they're talking over each other, we've all seen the clips there from the Oval Office. Zelensky was saying, we did have ceasefires, I have signed onto other agreements, and yet Putin crossed those lines. He said he blew up the ceasefires, he killed my people. Does he not have a valid point that there should be real, understanding his frustrations and skepticism that Putin is actually going to be a reliable partner in whatever deal comes together?
Really, there's two viable paths here. One is that this war continues on as it has for over 3 years. More and more Ukrainians will lose their lives. More and more of the country of Ukraine will be decimated and destroyed in this, what will continue to be essentially a war of attrition. And to what end? To what outcome? President Trump sees this reality. So the alternative to this, which he is so intent on, which he talked about continuously throughout his campaign, that the American people voted for, is his commitment to ending this war and bringing about peace. That requires bringing interested parties to the table to conduct these negotiations. Of course, both sides are going to have their arguments and their interests that they are fighting for. This is the reality of how these negotiations always occur during times of war. Neither side is going to be happy, very likely, with the outcome, but ultimately it needs to lead to peace. And that's what President Trump is so committed to, because he recognizes that the longer this goes on, not only are more Ukrainians losing their lives, but it increases the potential of this escalation towards World War III that he warned against as he sat there with Zelensky, saying that he's gambling with World War III, and that's not a cost that President Trump is willing to accept.
I want to put something up, a recent Quinnipiac poll just days ago. This is before the incident in the Oval Office, if that's what we want to call it. And it asked the American people, do you think the U.S. should trust Russian President Vladimir Putin? 81% of them said no. You know, it's hard to get 81% of Americans to agree on anything but they're united on that. So why does this administration trust Putin?
I think President Trump goes in with the cynical eye as he does. I imagine with any deal that he's made, it's not about blind trust at all. It's about looking at the factors that are on the table, negotiating with all interested parties. And then for President Trump, ultimately, he's going to look out for what's in the best interest of the American people, our ability to live in a peaceful and prosperous way in our country, and uphold the values of freedom that we hold dear. So I think, again, President Trump has a very realist view of the picture and what's at stake, which is why he's so committed to working to bring about an end to this war, and frankly, why he's proven that as this war has been waged over the last 3 years, he's the only one that has the ability to do that.
So our next guest coming up, Democratic Congressman, Senator Chris Van Hollen, says that he is very worried about what he saw on Friday, what it communicates. He says the people who are celebrating are Russia and Putin, Xi and China, people who don't have America's best interests at heart. And we do have, over the weekend, a number of reactions out of Russia. You've got Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying President Trump's the one using common sense and that we like the way he's acting. You've got the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov saying what the U.S. is doing is changing the game and it largely coincides with our vision. What do you make of Russia celebrating and saying what the U.S. is doing lines up with their vision?
They're going to say what their position is. What we should pay attention to here in the United States of America is the American people, so many people across the country celebrating the strong leadership that President Trump and Vice President Vance demonstrated in the Oval Office, something we have not seen over the last 4 years of the Biden administration, where we finally have a president who's going to stand up strongly and fiercely and unwaveringly for the cause of peace and freedom for the American people. I know that that is who President Trump has on his heart and on his mind as he is working towards bringing about a negotiated end to this war. I think those who are criticizing his efforts in this way are showing that they are not committed to peace. And in the case of many of those European countries, that they're not committed to the cause and values of freedom. Even though they speak of this, we heard very clearly during Vice President Vance's speech in Munich, different examples of how these European partners and longtime allies in many cases are actually implementing policies that undermine democracy, that shows that they don't actually believe in the voices of the people being heard, and implementing anti-freedom policies. We're seeing this in the United Kingdom, we're seeing this in Germany, we saw it with the tossing out of the elections in Romania. So there's something fundamentally deeper here that shows a huge difference in divergence between the values that President Trump and Vice President Vance are fighting for, the values that are enshrined in our Constitution, the interests of the American people in our peace and freedom and national security, versus those of many of these European countries who are coming to Zelensky's side as he walked out of the White House, saying basically that they are going to support him in continuing this war and that they don't stand with us around these fundamental values of freedom.
Well, and they also, though, think that they're in more alignment, and they should be, with the U.S. when it comes to those freedoms and things you talk about. Certainly, those are not things that you would say that Russia or Putin celebrates or bestows on his own people.
That's correct. I would not make that claim, and it's clear that that's not the case, nor does President Trump. But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about many of these European countries and Zelensky himself, who claim to be standing and fighting for the cause of freedom and democracy, when we actually look at what's happening in reality in these countries, as well as with Zelensky's government in Ukraine, is the exact opposite. You have the canceling of elections in Ukraine. You have political parties being silenced or even criminalized or thrown in prison. You have the freedom of religion, churches being shut down. You have political opposition being silenced. You have total government control of the media. We could go down a whole laundry list of issues that are against the values of democracy and freedom. So it really begs the question, as Vice President Vance said again in Munich, it's clear that they're standing against Putin. Obviously, that's clear. But what are they actually really fighting for? And are they aligned with the values that they claim to hold in agreement with us? The values that President Trump and Vice President Vance are standing for, and those are the values of freedom, of peace, and true security.
All right, so the way that you describe Ukraine and the way that most Americans and most of the world understands Russia. Are you saying it's essentially choosing between the lesser of two evils?
What I'm focused on is what President Trump is focused on, which is peace, seeing the world through a very clear picture and making sure that the president is having honest and good faith negotiations with both of these countries to bring about an end to this war. That is what it's about. That lives are at stake. The potential of World War III, if this war continues to go on and escalate, is what's at stake. And again, President Trump will make his decisions and will stay very focused on what is in the best interests of the American people and ensuring that future of peace and freedom.
If you found this video useful or entertaining, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Till next time.